Hi, and welcome to Top Dice. My name's Ade, and I've got with me my usual co-host, Chris. And also today we're interviewing Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hiya. Yeah.
And tell us a bit about yourself, Steve. Who are you?
Right. And I'm currently the CEO of Brittannia Games Designs, the publishers and owners of Chivalry Sorcery, and a couple of other products. I'm also the co-owner and financial director of GMS Hobby Games Logistics, a fulfillment company that I set up with another colleague to fulfill our own Kickstarters, which we've now stepped into distribution as well. One of our major clients is Pinnacle. So we the UK distributors for Savage Worlds now.
Brilliant.
But primarily, it's Chivalry Sorcery what I'm here for.
Definitely, very definitely. And we'll get on to that quite soon because there's quite a story behind that, I think. But
Yes.
tell us, how did you actually get into role-playing and gaming in the first instance? When was that, and what was the gateway?
Right. I was started out as a war gamer, initially World War II, back in 1974 as a 10-year-old. Quickly moved on to dabble with Napoleonics before finding first love of ancients. And then about 1978, one of my closest friends, Steve, we were both ancient wargamers, and we'd read about Tony Bath's Hyboria campaign. So we was creating a fantasy campaign. We basically took a map of Europe, flipped it so land became sea, sea became land, detailed brief notes on some countries based on historical countries. So one country was Egypt, one country was Rome, etc. Then got back to school, final year, 1979, September, and another friend said, "Oh, my brothers are playing this game called Dungeons and Dragons at uni. Do you want to have a go at it?" So we thought about it and said, "Yeah, why not?" So for the first session, I took along about 15, 20 fighters, 2 or 3 clerics, a couple of mages, a couple of thieves, a couple of rangers, and a paladin. And then to be told, "Oh, you only have one character." And it was, what the?
Mind-blowing.
And so that was the introduction to role playing. And we actually started with first edition AD&D. We got our hands on Games Workshop softbound Player's Handbook and Monster Manual, and was able to still buy White Dwarf 1 and 2 off the shelves. So we had the Monster Mark system, and got White Dwarf 13 for the combat tables.
Yes.
But then you had no idea what you were doing. So what monsters do you put on a dungeon level? I'll divide the hit dice by 2. That'll be close enough. So, you start on your 3rd level of the dungeon. What are we facing? Oh, it's this big worm-like thing that's purple. Oh, right. What does it do? It kills you. First TPK.
Yeah.
Wow.
That kind of mirrors Gary Gygax and Dave Arnson's sort of players campaigns, that doesn't it? The initial ones. So Dungeons and Dragons was the first proper role playing game. So what are your 3 favorite role playing games? They can be yours, obviously, or other people's.
Yeah.
So if you had to sit
It would
down,
be. I would have to say my favourites currently are Chivalry Sorcery, obviously.
yeah,
The ones I'm itching to play is the Dark Eye.
Who's that by?
And I'm currently enjoying running Savage Pathfinder. I have absolutely no interest at all in playing Pathfinder. It's still just a complicated version of D&D for me. And in some respects, I've left D&D behind, looking at other systems.
Oh, yeah.
And it's certainly other systems I enjoy is Call of Cthulhu. There's Triple Ace Games stuff that they do for Ubiquity is really good.
yeah. You're a big fan, Chris, aren't you?
That stuff. Yeah. I could play that all day long. It's gorgeous, yeah. Quite simple as well, you know. I mean, you know,
I've got so many systems over the years that we've tried.
We've got the advantage, obviously, now of Chivalry and Sorcery, which is obviously yours to do with as you want, and
yes,
the system is pretty. We'll get onto that in a second, actually. So the Dark Eye as well. Yeah, that's another one. Have you played that at all, or?
I've got a pile of stuff for it, but I've not had the chance to run it or play it yet.
Yeah, that was the big European one, wasn't it? The German one. I did have it briefly. It's seen a couple of incarnations, I think, over here. And yeah, Chris was saying who actually published that? Yeah, I can't remember now. Yeah. Was it WizKids or something like that? Can't remember now.
I'll have to look into that one.
Yeah, it's anyway, your games. So Chivalry and Sorcery, we've got that one.
Yes.
What other games are you actually responsible for, if any?
Right. The other product line we've got for Brittannia Games is we have what we call the Essence line.
Yeah.
And it started out as a little bit of a joke back in 2000, where another friend, Colin Spears, we jokingly asked to do a very brief D20 version, an essence of CNS using the D20, because everybody was kicking off on the D20 games at the time. And we thought, let's yank a chain or two. And we put it out as a freebie, and it was about 4 pages, no more than 8. And from that, we then did a Victorian game, and then Colin was working on a science fiction version. We've now got the science fiction game is available on drive-through called Rocket Jocks, and it's very much in the vein of the old 1930s Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers. We've got Vis Imperium Victoriana, which is a Victorian stroke steampunk using the Essence rules. And the actual core rules are actually there as a free download.
Yeah, I came across the free download and I have actually used them. So there we go. Excuse me. When I was working in Preston on a project, I ended up sort of using the Essence rules there as a lunchtime thing, because 2 or 3 of the lads and lasses there wanted to give role playing a go. So I actually used your rules for that. So small world.
Yeah, that does sound very interesting.
So okay, Chivalry and Sorcery. This is the big one. Now, there's a bit of a story behind this, if you'd like to say. Now, how did you actually get Chivalry and Sorcery? Because I remember it, red box, going back, God, years ago. I had the first, well, I presume it was the first edition of it. So tell us more.
The first edition came out in 1977 as the Red Book, and the story is that originally Ed Symbolist and Wolf Backers had gone to Gen Con in the States with their version of Advanced D&D. Now, this was before AD&D. This was an advanced version of original D&D that they'd call Chevalier. And they went to Gen Con wanting to offer it to TSR. And the story that Ed told me was that they saw Gary Gygax and they suddenly thought, let's go somewhere else. And they went to Fantasy Games Unlimited, and Scott Bizarre signed them up. And what he did was he got the pages and shrunk them. So what people got as a Red Book should have been 4 pages that got shrunk onto 1. So the typeface is so small. But it gained a cult following, and it was quite popular. Then in '82, Wilf redesigned it. Ed redesigned it, and it came out as a box set with 3 white books, and that was 2nd edition, which is where me and my friends first encountered it. carry on to sort of 95, 96. FGU had sold CNS to Highlander Designs. Highlander Designs were doing a 3rd edition, and they were putting out looking for play testers and everything on what was wherever World Wide Web was back in those days, chat rooms. And we got our hands on the 3rd edition in 96. I contacted Highlander Designs to become a licensee, to put out what was my campaign world that I'd first created back in 1982. And we got accepted. We produced Dragon Reaches of Marrakesh as the first source book. Great. And then sort of a year later, we just released our 2nd product, and we were working on a 3rd adventure when Ed got in touch with me and said that Highlander Designs were going into liquidation, and they were trying to sell CNS to Wizards of the Coast. And I decided, let's step in and let's see if we can buy the IP, which we did. And we basically bought the whole IP, lock, stock and barrel, and any standing stock, which you think, that's not too bad. I was told, we've got a couple of pallets of standing stock. And I thought, okay. At that time, I was working in export. So pallet, yeah, it's going to be about what, 1.5 meters high?
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and a couple of mates, we could handball 2 pallets like that off a wagon.
Yeah.
When they finally arrived in this country, there were 2 pallets that were 8 feet high.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to work in the book industry as well, and yeah, I can confirm that's how we used to get the paperbacks from the States. Yeah. So you had a bit of stock to start with.
Yeah, a lot of it was old FGU stock, which we quickly found a second-hand trader in the States, and we effectively shipped 2 pallets of that straight back. and quickly liquidated that stock. But no, so we started working on, we needed something to come out because 3rd edition initially had been received quite well.
Yeah.
But there was a load of issues and they'd upset distributors. So we quickly put together Chivalry Sorcery Light, which was a 48-page, really light version that we could get out very quickly. And we actually got Ed Symbolist over it for a couple of years. He came over, and it was in that period that Ed and I brainstormed 4th edition, which we called the Rebirth. And we went back to having it as 3 books. Yep. At that time in 2001, the printer we worked with in the UK, the maximum page count they could saddle stitch was 100 pages. And that's what we restricted our page count to. I'm still surprised I'm married because my wife Sue was doing all of our editing and layouts, and she was pregnant with our first child, and I told her that, oh, by the way, I've booked the printers, we need to get it finished by this point so the printer's ready. So at one point she fell asleep at the keyboard at 2 o'clock in the morning
whilst being pregnant. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
I must have a certain amount of charm.
Definitely. Very, very much so.
Yes. Yeah, they don't. No, I don't know any woman who'd hang around for that whilst pregnant unless they really wanted to. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So there we go. Okay, hats off to her as well. And I did actually sort of own a copy of that and did enjoy it as well. So there you go. Good job was done on that one for sure. Now, again, Chris, you've not come across any of these, have you?
Yeah, I'm completely new to this. I love all this stuff. I love hearing how sort of games sort of were created, and not just how the game itself is created, but who are the people behind it, and who are they sort of like for example, you know, your dear wife, the unsung heroes, as it were, you know, that we don't get to hear about.
Yeah. Sue had an interesting introduction to gaming. That prior to setting up Brittannia Games in 1997, prior to that, I was an RPGA regional director for the Midlands and East Wales. And
I was Northwest, quite heavily involved with the Northwest as well, Northwest England.
Okay.
So yeah,
so we
I'm surprised.
We probably have crossed paths.
We must have done, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a whirl, is that at that time? But yeah, that's I love my period.
Yeah, so 94 to 97, I was the RPGA regional director, and one of our briefs was to set up our own convention. And Sue had dropped it on me that she's a trained PA, and her final PA exam was in 3 hours. She had to detail how she'd create a convention for 300 people while her boss had gone on holiday. And I thought, yeah, we can do that. And
Perfect.
hence we started Dudley Bug Ball. But it also meant that I ended up being a TSR demonstrator. I don't know if you ended up doing that, Adrian.
Yes, I ended up exactly the same from TSR UK. I'd had a couple of visits. I can't remember the lady's name now that came along. She was there. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Very enthusiastic, and she got me on board as a demoer, and loved it. And I was running a shop at the same time, so it linked in very well.
We were invited over to the launch of Dragon Dice in Cambridge, and on the train going over,
I remember Dragon Dice. Good God!
Yeah, Lester Smith.
Well, on the train going over to Cambridge, my friend and I, who were down to demonstrate it, were going through the rules, and Sue joined in and learned how to play Dragon Dice. She came with us thinking she was going to get a day shopping in Cambridge. Oh no. When they realised that she could play Dragon Dice,
oh God,
she was given a TSR T-shirt, and these T-shirts had just been done, and they had Fantasy Guide in gold letters on black, and the Fantasy Guide was 6 inches high, and the comment was, "A female who knows how to play Dragon Dice."
Oh my God!
Yeah. It would have been a big thing. That huge,
and it ended up that. There's so many moms with kids saying, "Oh, can my kids learn how to play Dragon Dice?" And it almost became a creche area. But as a result of that, she's always said she will never game, she will never role play, even though she'd be a really good one, because editing the products, she could be objective.
Yeah.
So we'd be writing all these rules, and she goes saying, "What are you trying to say here?" And we then have to take a second look and then rewrite it.
Yeah. That actually is a really good point, because I've done a bit of editing as well for Cake Bread and Walton. Done a bit of messing around on that front, and also for other bits and pieces. And it is quite difficult to keep objectives in sight and making sure that you do get the text right and get the correct meaning over, because obviously we know what we're talking about. We've got to make sure that it's actually understandable by someone who has just opened the book for the first time and gone, "What is this thing?"
Yeah, I mean, Christopher was saying about the design process. I'm responsible for the combat system in 4th and what is in 5th.
Yeah.
And when I wrote it for 4th edition, we had about 8 playtest groups around the world, and I'd send out the combat system, and it had come back, and it went through at least 20 rewrites. Some of the people that were in the playtest groups were reenactors, so we were drawing on their experience of what their combat was like. I was also drawing on my experience of doing archery, and if anybody's ever done any target archery, you'll have encountered target blindness.
Yeah.
Which is where in target archery, you often use a clicker, a little metal strip that's on the side of the bow, that when you draw the arrow all the way back, it doesn't click until you've got to full draw.
Yep.
and at the click you release. A lot of people will aim at the top, they'll aim at the gold, and they'll draw, and they freeze. They can't draw that last inch for the clicker to release, and then you'll start to see their arms shake.
Yes, I've seen it.
We actually have that in CNS combat. You can spend time aiming to improve your chance to hit a target, but at a certain point, you have to make constitution checks. Otherwise, you start getting huge negative modifiers due to target blindness.
Yeah.
And I think we're the only role-playing game that incorporates that.
I've never come across it in any other game. I'll be quite blunt.
I've not seen anything quite. No, I actually don't think there's anything similar.
Yeah, but it does put a brake on these power gamers who will spend rounds aiming at a target to get a huge bonus.
+10, +10, +10, +10. Yeah.
Yeah.
You try holding one of those things for more than a few seconds, and good God, your arm is.
I used a 40-pound draw weight. My friend who shoots in the national, he uses a longbow. He shoots bare bow. I used to have the stabilizers and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, mine.
But
the one I used
but
was
it's using real world experiences, and trying to incorporate it into the game.
Yeah, this is it. It's quite interesting as well, the setting that you've actually sort of come up with. Now, obviously, I've had a bit of a read. You might notice that behind me is the copy.
Yes.
That I got. Absolutely gorgeous. Not going to pull it off the shelf, and I'm going to do a separate unboxing in inverted commas sometime of it. That particular, it's absolutely gorgeous. The slipcase, the actual books, the art, and just the feel of it all round. Now, the time I used it, actually, this is going back to the old Chivalry and Sorcery, was as a replacement for Pendragon when someone nicked me Pendragon. And someone wanted to play Pendragon, and I hadn't got it because it'd been pinched. So I ended up pulling off the shelf Chivalry and Sorcery, and we used that, and we had a darn good nightly game, to put it quite bluntly, with those rules. And I know full well the improvements that have been made since then have been.
The problem we had with third edition was first edition had a lot of medieval flavour.
Yeah.
Second edition had some of the medieval flavour. Third edition, they tried to make it a generic fantasy game, which was a big mistake. Still got some medieval stuff in, but it was a generic. Tried to make it generic fantasy. With fourth edition, the Rebirth, we started to add some of that flavour back. With fifth edition, we took the brakes off. We just whole hog.
Yeah.
One example is, in previous editions, you used to have a vocation called the Petty Sergeant, which was a land-owning freeman, bit above a yeoman, who had got a horse and was a mounted warrior, but not a knight.
Yeah.
In fifth edition, the Petty Sergeant became the Servian, which was a French term, which effectively is what was used to describe these mounted land-owning freemen, because Petty Sergeant never actually existed historically.
That's it. Yeah.
The term sergeant is a role, not an actual vocation. It's a title. And if you've gone through fifth edition, the stuff that we've put in there, like a little bit on North Africa.
Yes.
Showing that the medieval period wasn't just this male white preserve. It was very diverse.
Yeah, very much so.
That really is, yeah. Because with sort of, I came in starting playing medieval fantasies, and it was all sort of like white European back in the 90s, and I wish I'd picked it up sooner. It's a shame. I'll be looking into it.
Yeah, well,
not just saying this because I'm sat here talking to you. That is genuinely fascinating. And that is another reason why somebody like myself, who's not picked it up before now, really should, because it sounds sort of dare I say it, quite diverse and sort of different.
Yeah.
I believe you've got I've not picked it up, but I believe you've actually gone a bit further east with it as well.
Yeah, with Land of the Rising Sun.
Yeah.
Originally, Lee Gold wrote Land of the Rising Sun back for Fantasy Games Unlimited as a Japanese expansion for CNS, but it was a standalone game. Lee had done some rewriting on it, but she'd rewritten it still in the old style of the early 80s. So it was all bullet pointed. So you got chapter 6 and you got 6.1, 6.11, 6.1.2. So we needed to sort of not exactly cut and paste, but look at how we were going to redo the layout. We did it on a Kickstarter. We got so much aggro from American Asians saying cultural appropriation, etc. And even though we were out already in negotiations with a couple of editors who were Japanese, one male, one female, to keep it balanced. And even that, it was almost as though, having Japanese cultural editors isn't good enough. And no, they're living in Japan. They know what they're talking about. Yeah.
This is you see a lot of it, unfortunately, these days. Yeah.
So there's lots of things in Land of the Rising Sun which goes off a little bit tangent. Like you can role play some of the unusual species from Japanese culture, like the bakemono. But you can also role play spirits. For example, if you really want to, your character can be the spirit of a temple bell that can assume human form.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Or your character could be the spirit of a katana that can assume human form.
Yeah. It's I think a lot of people actually sort of lose the vision and realize that these are actually fantasy games in fantasy settings as well.
But what we try to achieve, not counting Dragon Reaches of Marrakesh, because that is our fantasy campaign setting, but for other stuff like Land of the Rising Sun, we look to have a historical source book with the folklore of the setting.
Yeah.
So it's got the fantasy stuff in there, but the fantasy stuff is the folklore that the people would have had in their myths and legends that they believed in.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the next step anyway for Chivalry and Sorcery? What's on the horizon?
We've got 3 Kickstarters stroke crowdfunders projects that we're looking to complete. We've got the Earldom of Gar, which is a 4-book adventure campaign with the setting, which is in the realms of Marrakesh. The PDF's already out there. We're just working with the printers now to get the files finalized so we can bring the hard copy out. We've got the Celts source book, which I've got some final bit of editing to do on it. Backers have had the beta version. And then I'll be starting to look at laying out Dux Bellorum, which is the King Arthur source book for CNS. I do turn around to people and say, if you want to play a King Arthur game where King Arthur and his knights are in full plate armor, jousting and everything, play Pendragon.
Yeah,
this is not that Arthur.
No, it's the real thing.
This is the post-Roman Arthur, the leader of battles, with post-Roman infantry and cavalry, very much of the Welsh legends, not of Mallory.
Yeah.
So this is set in the time of Gildas, not Geoffrey of Monmouth.
That
And then,
is probably going to be one of the more interesting ones. My middle name is Gawain, you see, so there's quite a strong connection to Arthurian legends. So that's definitely on my list. Is that one?
Yeah, it's often all he talks about. Just won't shut up about it. In a good way, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's satisfied my itch a little bit that because I've been researching a historical Arthur for just over 30 years. So which included, I mean, if you've done archaeology, Adrian, you may have come across somebody called Roger White.
I have indeed, yes.
Yeah, I was fortunate to field walk Roxeter with Roger White and with a group.
Okay, as a bit of a wild question here then. Arthur, did he exist, do you think?
Yes, but not as a king, and Arthur was probably a nickname.
Yep, and where would he have been located?
I would imagine that he would be located in the Midlands area, possibly around Roxeter, because you've got a network of roads around the Roxeter that go all the way around the country. Roxeter was the fourth largest Roman city in Roman Britain, and it's the only Roman city that wasn't under Saxon control.
Yeah,
of those top four.
Yeah, I'm with you on most of this. Yeah,
you've also got the rebuilding within Roxeter at the period in the Roman style of a 3-story palace.
Yeah, which
there's also indications that there was refortification of certainly of the northern ramparts of Roxeter, evidence of earthen rampart and ditch, which, as that's the north of Roxeter, would be ideally placed to protect against the Irish and Pict raiders.
Yeah, exactly. It's not too far from where I placed him. I placed him between along the Scottish borders down to there. So that was the stretch that I think or believe that he would have inhabited. But there you go, small world. Okay, so that's coming out. Chris, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, as somebody who's sort of learning about all this for the first time, am I right in saying that chivalry and sorcery is sort of more sort of like sort of historical, sort of like, you know, dare I say it, time team rather than sort of a Ridley Scott epic, which, as we know, is not exactly.
It can be both. It can be both.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because we don't blatantly say, but most of the rules in CNS are optional. So if you want to play CNS without the magic and the religion rules, you can. If you want to include the religion rules, there's stuff in there that a game master can be so evil to the players that, for example, the 3 religions we include are Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. We had a female Muslim journalist write the Islam section, practicing Jew write the Judaism section. But in the Christianity one, we've got a huge table, which is a list of all the sins that were regarded in the time and what their penances are.
That's interesting.
And what we have in the game is we don't have hit points. Each character has body points, which is based on your actual body size, your body mass. That's what dictates how much body damage you can take. We also have fatigue, which is temporary damage, bruising, or exertion. We also have spirit points, which can go up and down depending on your act. So if your character is very pious and does lots of great deeds, his spirit points will go up above his spirit attribute. But if he does something really naughty that needs a penance, that spirit drops. And what we say is if your spirit drops to 0, your spirit has been broken. But these penances, they're all historical penances, ranging from adultery to bestiality, to all sorts of wonderful things that were regarded as sins by the Catholic Church.
And I think this is one of the the reasons why Chivalry and Sorcery has an edge on quite a few other game systems. And it certainly has, I know it covers sort of different parts of the world, but it certainly, when I read it, it certainly has quite an British feel to it as well as a British game.
Oh yeah, we were so careful to make sure we no Z's, it's all S's. U's are in the right place.
Yeah.
So yes, it's very much a British spelt book.
And that's one of the reasons why it comes across so nicely, I think, as well as the layout and the presentation of it. You can tell it's a labour of love. The writing is excellent in it as well, so the editing as well. So that'll be down to your good wife. And
Sue stepped back from the 5th edition. All the colour stuff, we've got other people who have been doing the editing on it. But certainly the earlier stuff that's ours, which is the black and white stuff, that's all been edited by and laid out by Sue. But he just didn't have the time to be able to work on their 5th edition.
Quite an undertaking, I would have thought that. Have you got any other Kickstarters coming out in the near future?
Yeah, it's my friend Andy. Yeah, my friend Andy at the time, he was in between work and he got plenty of time, so I was able to give him some work to do. And he taught himself in design, watched all the videos, and he has done a stunning job on laying out everything from the 5th edition core rules all the way up to the latest stuff.
Absolutely excellent. That's and what is the next project to hit? Do you know? Are you able to tell us?
We're working on a number of items that at the moment. For Marrakesh, we've got a couple of Doomsday books coming out for various areas that we're focusing on, which will give a brief description of every settlement in the area in the same style as the Doomsday book. So you'll have the village reeve, you'll know how many families are in there, you'll know how big they've got, what acreage they've got farmed, how much woodland is there. So there's enough if you were just passing through as a GM, but if you want to detail it, there's the bare nuggets for you to expand upon.
Brilliant.
I'm working on the Artificers book, which will expand on some of the new vocations. You'll have the Armourer Magus, the Weaponsmith Magus, Jewelsmith Magus, and these are all the ones who make some of the magic items that you can play as characters. But one of the big projects will be the spell books, that we're collating all of the spells from the core rules, from Land of the Rising Sun, and also spells that Mystic Station Designs, who were a licensee back in the late 90s, they brought out a number of expansions, and we collated all of their spells into these 14 books, one for each method of magic. And they'll be dime book size, so they'll be 6 inches by 9 inches, and it'll basically form an encyclopedia set of spells. For each one will have 1 or 2 new mage vocations tied to that method of magic. So, for example, the divination volume will have the astrologer, the seer, and so we'll be looking at and other information about other forms of divination that expand upon what's in the core rules.
That's going to make a huge addition to the line. Is that?
We're going to
Yeah.
need
Well,
some more shelf space, I think.
yeah. Well, I just like the idea that if I'm going to a convention and I'm playing a mage in CNS, I want to be at the table and I want to say, "Oomph! There are my spell books."
Yeah, that great. Love it. I just absolutely love that. That's for sure.
So,
yeah.
Go on, Chris.
If somebody like myself were to start Chivalry and Sorcery from scratch, what books would you suggest I start with?
I would start with the Quick Start, which is a free download, which gives you the basic rules, some pre-gen characters for 5th edition, and a sample adventure.
Oh, that's cool.
Or I would go to Chivalry and Sorcery Basic, which the PDF's $2. And what that does, it's got the basic rules from 5th edition. It's got a character generation system, which is really simple, and some basic spells. And that will allow you to create characters and play them up to 5th level.
Okay.
That should be enough for you to get a flavour of how the game mechanics work. The full-blown 5th edition character generation, we make no excuses. Expect to put a few hours in to create your initial character. But once you've got your character, everything is then on the character sheet. You've done all the crunchy stuff, getting your character created. When you're in play, you're rolling against a total skill chance. And you're rolling percentile dice to get equal to or under. Mm-hmm. You roll a third D10, and that's showing how successful or how big a failure it is. 1 is low, 10 is high. A modified roll of 10 or higher is critical, whether that's a failure or a success. In combat, that's the additional damage that you do. That's the random damage that you do with a weapon. Some weapons give a bonus to that crit die, depending on what the weapon is. Now, a charging lance gives you +6. Cool. So if you're charging with a lance and you roll your crit die, you get +6 on it. So any roll of 4 or higher, and it's a critical success. But that's assuming that you've made your roll. If you fail your roll, that's going to be a critical failure. So the weapons that do the most damage have a bigger chance of you actually getting a critical failure if you miss.
Which makes a lot of sense.
With magic, if you fully learn a spell, you don't roll to cast the spell, you just cast it. However, most, if not all spells, you have to target them. So if you want to cast, say, a fiery arrow at a target, if you fully learnt the spell, you cast it, but you have to target, and you roll against your mode of magic, whether that's witchcraft, power word mage, hexmaster, and the modifier against that roll is the target's magic resistance. So that can reduce your chance to target them. And if you fail to target them, the spell goes off, but you don't know where it's going. And that is where the GM can have fun saying, well, what was the crit die roll on your failure? And what we've found I've been running my campaign now it's about to enter its 4th year. And what we have found is one of the parts of combat is if your crit die reaches a certain level when you're hitting with a weapon, it's an optional rule, but most people like it because it's just fun. It's a bash. So you hit somebody and you've hit them with enough force that you've knocked them back a couple of feet. Or if you're something like a giant, you hit them, you knock them back flying 15 feet. You can knock your opponent prone or to their knees. If they're knocked down to their knees, or they're knocked prone, you can spend a fatigue point to have a combat advantage and get a free attack. what we turn around and say is, if you were in a real fight and you got somebody down on the ground, would you stand back and let them get back up to try and hit you?
Well, yeah.
No.
Exactly. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You would put the boot in. And that's what we find with CNS and combat. Strangely, pure accident, no designing this at all. Combat turns out to be cinematic and very quick.
Hmm.
There you go. One to stick on our list, Chris. I think
Definitely.
to play. We'll
yeah.
get.
I for one will be checking out the quick starts on that one. Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's a good read as well. And again, it's in full colour.
I'll say, so far, this has been very insightful and a massive education. I love system sort of theory, and for lack of a better word, if you can call it anything. But sort of anything that moves away from sort of roll initiative, hit. You know, the more the more tactical, the more intelligent.
Yeah, well, what you do with the CNS combat is everybody starts with the base action points. At the start of a combat round, you'll roll d10 and add that to that score.
Okay.
You then go around the table. Who's got the highest base action points? Oh, Fred's on 10, he's on 7, he's on 11. 1 on 11, you go first. Watch your action. Take your action. Cross off the cost of that action. And after everybody's had a turn, go around. Now who's got the highest? And suddenly initiative is moving around the table.
All right, I like that. Yeah.
And
yeah.
And if you've knocked somebody prone on the ground, they lose action points. So they not only have they been knocked to the ground, they've lost their action points for that round.
So there you go. I knew you'd actually like this, Chris.
Yes, definitely.
If you like playing mages, spells, most spells you can learn, but we also allow the use of combinations of spells. You can create a combination. The easiest example I give is create combination, charm person, link it to transmutation, and trigger is spell is dispelled when target is kissed by princess.
There you go.
So that spell charms the person, turns them into a frog, and the spell is dispelled when kissed by a princess. And because they've been charmed, they can't resist the transmutation spell.
You know what? It's little things like this that just make a game. I must admit, I have been really impressed with the game design of it and just the whole feel of it.
The one thing I will say is, at no point did we ever consider game balance.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said yes, because dare I say it, I don't think you can have game balance. I mean,
yeah,
how can
it can ruin a game, can that, when you start looking at that level, and you rip the guts out of it, basically, the whole essence of it.
Yeah, the one thing we have done is skills have different difficulty factors, and depending on the difficulty factor, it gives you a maximum chance of success. So magic is a difficulty 5 or 6 skill, certain of the magic skills, which gives them a maximum chance of success of 92.
Okay.
So no matter how high you have got your mage's skill, in my game, my mage has got his mode of magic up to 142%, which is great. But whenever he's targeting a spell, he only ever has a maximum 92% chance of targeting.
Okay.
So
that just begs one question. What is the point in increasing the skill? Is there
once you get above the maximum chance for your skill, for every just going off the peg here. For every 10% over, you get a +1 to the crit die.
Ah, okay. Cool.
So the higher
like that.
percentage. So what it does is, if you fail, you can reduce the crit die by that number. So you may fail, but you've got less chance of a critical failure.
Which is always good.
Because you're so skillful in it.
Yeah.
So everybody's got a chance of failing in what they're doing, but because you're so knowledgeable, you can pull back from it being a critical.
Yeah. Yeah,
you can weave the magic a lot better. Basically, that's the which is great. Another thing I'm going to quickly touch upon is Harn, which I believe you're involved with as well.
Yeah, well, it's a side project that we probably would only put it out as free because of some of the issues, but I have got agreement with Columbia Games to write a guide for using CNS with Harn.
Brilliant.
I've already converted one of the Harn creatures to CNS. A nasty little bugger. If you play Harn, it's the Velasta, the Eater of Eyes.
Gosh, brings back memories from years ago. One of my favourite all-time fantasy supplements was Cities of Harn. That set me in so many good sort of steads for playing Dungeons and Dragons. Those cities, and it was an absolute favourite for years. Was that book?
Yeah, I mean there is so much synergy between Harn and Harn Master and CNS anyway.
Yeah, there is.
I mean the stories I've been told was Harn was Robin Crosby's CNS campaign, and when you look at Harn Master, you can see some of the synergy there.
Yeah.
I do know there's quite a lot of CNS players use Harn as a setting, so it just sort of made sense just to put out something that was semi-official for CNS for using Harn.
Okie dokie. And if there was one addition far in the future that if you could do anything with CNS that you've not done already, what would it actually be?
There's a work in progress that we're currently working on, which is called Core Skillscape, which is taking the Skillscape game mechanics from CNS, streamlining the character generation, part of which is what we have in CNS Basic, and using that as our version of BRP.
That again sounds pretty darn exciting.
Excellent stuff.
One of the things that we are working on that we have got in Core Skillscape is if you've got the rules, you understand that your total skill chance for a skill is made up of the basic skill chance and your personal skill factor. Your personal skill factor is based on your attribute bonus and your level.
Mm-hmm.
The higher your PSF goes in combat is how quickly you can hit something. So the higher your PSF, the lower the action point cost for your weapons. Partly this is some engineering I've done in it, so that if you're a really, really top-notch archer, in game terms, you can shoot 20 arrows a minute.
Okay.
If you're a really skillful knife fighter, you can get 2 attacks in with your on your turn. But
again, makes sense.
But one of the things that we wanted to do is utilizing your PSF score. That the higher your PSF goes in a skill, gives you access to tricks that you can do. So, for example, quarterstaff. In the game, we just say you've got a quarterstaff, you hit like you would, like Robin Hood. But if you get more skillful with a quarterstaff, you can suddenly switch to grabbing it by one end and doing a real roundhouse hit with it.
Excellent.
If you're using a broadsword, tricks like suddenly switching and hitting somebody with the pommel.
Mm.
So instead of, if somebody's got so plate armor, crushing damage tends to do more damage to somebody through plate armor than slashing or pierce. So you suddenly switch your sword, switch it over and hit them with the pommel, so it's crushing damage. And that's what we're looking to build in, so tricks and stuff. So Savage Worlds calls them edges. We're not referring to them as feats, but these are like techniques that you're learning with your different weapons and other skills.
They were very much a martial art back in again. You think obviously of the Oriental martial arts, but a lot of the Crusaders and like they all had their own styles of how to use the weapons, which were trained. They were trained by grandmasters.
Yeah, and these tricks and techniques, they don't come automatically. Chris won't be aware of this, but in CNS, your experience points don't take your level up automatically.
Okay.
So you gain say you gain 5,000 experience points. That's great. But until you've spent those 5,000 experience points improving skills, they don't count towards your experience level.
Okay, that again makes sense. Yeah.
But what it also means is you can spend experience points to buff your dice rolls, to make a death saving throw.
Oh, I see.
But they still count towards your experience level spend, because you're utilizing experience that you have gained to get an edge or avoid a death attack.
You've learnt, basically. You've learned something. You're
using the experience that you've gained.
Yeah. Which is, again, I think quite a novel way within a game. Because normally if you use it, it's gone. And again, it really, it should be like that. You have learnt a valuable experience.
What your experience level is there, it's there to put a break on gamers just throwing everything into one skill. So the cost to improve a skill level is the skill level that you're trying to attain minus your experience level. So if you're experience level 1 and you've currently got slashing swords at the experience level 3, you want to take that up to level 4. So it's going to cost you 3 times the normal cost. So 4 minus 1 is 3. But if you waited until you got to experience level 2, it would only cost you twice the cost.
Yep.
4 minus your experience level. So it suddenly becomes very expensive if somebody wants to just focus on one skill.
Yeah, and people wouldn't. The reality is you would not just focus on a single skill.
What we've found in our game is people haven't necessarily focused on a skill. They've perhaps gone 1 or 2 skill levels above their experience level, but they've broadened their knowledge. They've learned new skills.
Yeah.
So that they've broadened out.
Would it be possible to teach other characters skills to sort of to make it easier for them to learn?
Yeah, the rules are in there for learning, and you can learn from a master or from books.
Oh, excellent.
So that's already in the core rules. We also have rules for downtime. So if you want your characters to say spend 2 months in downtime, they can still gain experience points. So mages gain experience points from enchanting stuff, making items, learning spells. There's something in there if you really want it. That first and second edition had black magic.
Yeah, I remember
it was
that.
Dropped in. It was dropped in 3rd, and we didn't bring it back in 4th. In 5th, we had a change of heart, but what we turned around and said, it's not really magic. They're more acts of faith, but they're profane acts of faith. So we've brought them back, but there are profane acts of faith for evil priests. And some of the profane acts of faith, they always had command words. I used to have a character who had, in second edition, he got black magic, and he used to like using Finger of Death. And the rule is that if you want to use that spell, you have to say the command words from memory. You can't refer to the book. If you do it from memory, and if you cock it up, it backfires. So in 5th edition, we have that. So Finger of Death is Ashak ul Karak nun Ashak. It shows how frequently I used to use it.
I love that touch to it. I really do. That's that again. It
So
lends another
that's
dimension to it. That really really does.
But again, there's all little they're like little modules that you can use.
Yeah.
In my game, I don't use some of the religion stuff because it goes to quite a good an nth degree in finding out what your hindrances are, learning how to remove them, and the more that you remove, the closer you become to sainthood. If you want to run a religious game, brilliant. It's there if you want to use it. If you don't, ignore it.
Yeah. That's well, the plan is at some stage a bit later in the year, it's going to come to the family's table is Chivalry and Sorcery, and I'm really looking forward to actually having a good old dive in there. And I'll be
if you want to have a look at if you want to see what it's like in play. Last year I did do a couple of live stream games for the Mr. Mean Speaks channel. Okay, I'm advertising another YouTube channel
absolutely
here.
fine. No problem.
Those two games are combined are about 4 hours of seeing what a Chivalry and Sorcery fantasy type games like.
Could you do me a favor? Could you actually send me a link later to them? And what I will do,
yes.
I'll add it to the description of this, because the whole point actually of this is it is, as I mentioned, it's a community channel. So I'm absolutely fine giving others the limelight. It's not what we're about. We don't want to keep it just so. We want to spread the love. We're here for the love of gaming, and you've certainly sort of enhanced that for us this evening. You really have.
Certainly have.
That's
That's it.
It's great if we get people playing CNS, but most of us on the design team, we are pragmatic, and if people are buying the books just for source material for their own favorite system, that's fine by me.
Yeah.
We'd like people to play CNS, but at the end of the day, we are a business, and if you're buying it to use for another system, it's still a sale.
Yeah, exactly. From my side as a writer, I like looking to see how many people have actually downloaded, not just purchased, but downloaded things that I've actually sort of written. And I'm sort of thinking, do you know, that's several thousand people out there who have bothered to take a look at what I've actually sort of written.
Yeah.
And hopefully they've enjoyed it. Touch wood, up to now, I've had nobody come back to me and say, "Good God, what was that you did?" So long may that reign. But it's nice to think about what you've done there.
Yeah, it's nice seeing the CNS Facebook group. It trickles up 1 or 2 new members on a weekly basis, and it slowly grows. And it's nice seeing that there's more people finding
the question quest. Sort of it developed into something that was far beyond what I first thought it would be, and then to have the prize such as it was absolutely incredible, because the idea was to basically take that other role-playing best question
The RPG a day one, yeah, and
Yeah.
it was meant as a mixture of several things, wasn't it? That it was supposed to be sort of a self-help over a Christmas period, because I know people can be concentrating on the wrong thing, and it was to give gamers some sort of outlet. So
yeah,
a distraction, and
yeah,
like Christmas is for some people, and then with your inclusion with the CNS books, it just grew. Amazing, and
thank you very much.
absolutely, thank you very much. And then, I mean, we've set a pretty high bar there for next year if we do it next year. So we'll have to see.
it was so much fun taking part. I mean, it was looking back at memories as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
A lot of fun. Yeah.
One thing gamers love to talk about is memories. And I also love looking back and reading other people's memories, and the majority of the gamers do. And then you can go, oh yeah, and you can relate to it. And it was just so interesting, I think, to see the number of diverse reactions and replies there were to some of the questions. And yeah, it will be coming back next year. Well, it's not next year; it's this year. It will be coming back as long as everything's sort of okay. But the bookkeeping was quite incredible. So I'm going to get some people on board next time. It was taking an hour, sometimes an hour and a half each day to, it was just quite a chunk. In my lunch hour, I was there busy sort of scribbling away. You might have noticed that sometimes the results were coming out lunchtime, it's just after lunchtime, and that was because I had to sort of, I'd done part of them and I'd had to stop, and I'd sort of gone to work, and then during my lunch hour, and I had my colleagues looking at me going, what the heck are you doing with all these names of people and numbers after them? And they'd no idea what the heck I was doing, and I didn't let on, but I really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it as well. That's the thing. I didn't expect it to be what it was, though. That was just absolutely mind-blowing.
A massive thank you to all that took part as well.
Yeah, and if you're doing it again this year, then I will come up with something for this year's.
Thank you very much indeed. That again is so appreciated. Well, it's I'll begin to wrap things up now. I am going to put a link in to a just giving a charity page, because I know that you're associated with some little furry friends, aren't you?
Yeah, I work with 3 guinea pig rescues, one of which in Northampton I'm a trustee of, which I've helped gain full charity status. But twice a year, in sort of November and December, for 2 of the rescue fairs, Christmas fairs, I have got a red outfit that I put on. I'm too grumpy to be Santa Claus, so I'm Santa Paws.
Well, for that alone, as long as you're okay with it, sir, we would love to sort of put a link through for donations on that, and that will stay on there for as long as the video actually sort of stays up, which long may it do. I'd like to also add on a link to your Chivalry Sorcery Facebook user group as well. Get that there, and also a link through to the other interests that you actually have, the distribution.
I'll include that as well.
Yeah, might as well get it all in there, so it's all in one, and a link through to drive through as well to your page on there. So it's everybody will be able to find everything in there. The final thing from me though is, will you come back and talk to us again in a few months and bring us up to date of where you're at?
No problem at all.
Right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there. So it's thanks for me. Have you got anything you want to add, Chris?
Absolutely nothing. That this has been an absolutely joyous education. Please come back.
I will do.
And to those watching it, please like, subscribe, etc. Or the usual YouTube rubbish. But yeah,
Eloquently put.
Thank you.
And if I can add that, if anybody wants to know more about Chivalry and Sorcery, by all means, catch me at UK Games Expo. We've got a trade stand close to Chaosium and Free League, but at the end of Feb we have Dudley Bug Ball,
Indeed.
which is a small, traditional style, friendly, sociable con. Don't expect any organisation. We have a rugby scrum sign-up sheet table for games. Come along, fill out one of the forms if you want to run a game, see if anybody's interested. We're hosting it. We've got a bar which is done out as a Peaky Blinders bar, and it's over 2 days. If you can't stay at the Station Hotel, there's a Premier Inn and Travel Lodge within 10-15 minutes walk of the venue.
Brilliant. Oh, marvellous. Sounds good.
It's well, I'm hoping that I'll be able to sort of get there this year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that. If not, then certainly next year I will be. It's just going to depend on leave and another couple of things. But I'm hoping, touch wood, I can get out of something that I've actually has been already arranged for me by work, and I'll be able to join you there. Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll catch you all again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.